So now we will do the scripture. Just a little bit of an intro to this. This is in the book of Exodus, as you can see, Exodus chapter 15. This is called, sort of the subtitle, The Song of Moses and Miriam. What's really interesting about this passage is that it's the oldest poem, in fact, the oldest passage in the entire Bible. The scholars date it back to like 32 years or 3,200 years BC or something, but just interesting to know that this is the oldest passage in the whole Bible, the Song of Moses and Miriam. And the other really interesting thing about this that I'm going to be speaking to in a little bit is this: it's kind of like the first praise song ever written. And just to give you a little context, what's happening here is that the Israelites have just crossed the Red Sea through the waters that were parted, and they have realized for the very first time that God had a plan for their lives all along. They didn't see it before. Like when they were running and the Pharaoh was chasing them, and you know the whole story of the Israelites leaving Egypt. They didn't know until they got through the parted waters of the Red Sea and they were standing on the other side, and they knew that they were finally free. They sing this first praise song ever written: I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. He's my Father's God, and I will exalt him. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people that you have redeemed. And you will bring them in, and you will plant them on the mountain of your inheritance. The place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary that, Lord, your hands established. For us this morning, this is the word of the Lord. Together we say, thanks be to God. It's great to see some faces here this morning, and there's a couple of faces that I don't think I recognize, so welcome to you, and we hope, as always, you feel among friends and family here at First Press. I'm really excited to speak to you about this today because, first of all, it's a simple message. I like simple messages, just personally. I don't like anything complicated, but this is so not just a simple message, but something that I think that you can just sort of make real in your lives in a very simple way. And here's the message, so that if you wander over the next 10 or 15 minutes, at least you're going to get this message. And here's the message to all of this. If you listen to God's direction, you will see God's plan revealed in your life. That's it. Good night, everybody. That's the message. 30 seconds long. No, but I mean, that's it. How simple. If you listen to God's direction, you will see God's plan revealed in your life. You know, there are some awesome stories in the Bible. I know that your summer reading's probably over, but I encourage you to just look at some of these Old Testament stories. The stories do two things. They ask the question, who is God, and then they answer it. But what they also do is, if you know who God is, you also know who you are. Like when you discover who God is, then you discover your own identity as well. And you discover purpose and meaning in life. And that's the message that all these Old Testament stories carry. What's the point of my life? What am I called to? The first couple chapters of Ecclesiastes. Did you just recall, has anybody ever read the first couple chapters of Ecclesiastes? It is the most depressing literature you will ever read anywhere. I mean, the author is just, it's like meaningless. Everything's meaningless. Work is meaningless. Pleasure is meaningless. Wisdom is meaningless. He talks about his wife, but his wife doesn't like him that much. He's got children, but they're going to die. I mean, he just goes on and on in the first couple chapters of Ecclesiastes around how meaningless life is. But then in chapter 3, there's this shift. There's this incredible shift. And the writer says, I don't know anything about meaninglessness, and I don't know why life can be so random. But then he says, here's what I do know. And he lays down 4 things. Here's what I do know. I know that God is real, and then I know that God loves us. He says, I know that God desires for us to be happy. And then he says, I know that God desires for us to do good while we live. And then he ends it with this line. He finishes it with this line. God will make everything beautiful in its time. God will make everything beautiful in its time. After a whole discourse on how meaningless our life is, he says, here's what I know. God will make everything beautiful in its time. And it's the theme, it's this thread that runs through the whole Bible, that God will show you, like there will be a day when we will see what God has seen all along. God will make everything beautiful in its time, and there is a purpose. It's not meaningless after all. All the stories in the Hebrew Scriptures, these ancient writings that are over 3,000 years old, answer that same question. There's actually a purpose to life. Exodus 2. Subtitled The Birth of Moses. The story of Moses is a classic example of listen to God's direction in your life and you'll see a plan revealed. Like the whole story of Moses is about listen to God's direction and you'll see a plan revealed. Moses, if you remember the story, was lived in Egypt and then killed an Egyptian, so he had to leave. He went to the land of Midian. He became a shepherd for, scholars believe, at least a couple of decades. And then he's out tending his flocks, and he runs across a bush that is burning. It's the burning bush story. And through the bush, God says to him, I'm calling you to go back to Pharaoh and ask Pharaoh to let my people go. You know that story? You know what Moses said to God? Who am I? Do you remember this part? Who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and free the Israelites? So look, we all ask that same question. When we hear direction from God, and it could be anything. It could be, here's how I want you to get involved in the church. Here's what I want you to do in the community of faith. And we're like, who am I? I don't have any special talents. I don't really have a lot of resources. And I'm nobody. This is what Moses is saying when he hears the direction of God. But you know what Moses did. Moses obeyed the direction of God. In Exodus 3, verse 12, God says, Moses, I'm with you. Never forget, I'm with you. You listen to my direction, I'm with you, the plan will be revealed. That's what so he goes to Moses, he says, free my people, you know the story. Eventually, they leave. They're freed, and they go through the parted waters of the Red Sea, and Miriam writes this song, and I'd love to know the melody. Scholars believe that it was a song, like there was a melody to this song. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. It's true. Like God had a plan. All we have to do is listen to God, and when we say, I don't have what it takes, and God's like, don't you think that I would give you the wherewithal? Like if I tell you to do something, don't you think that I would give you what you need so that you can actually get it done? And this plan is revealed, and they sing, Miriam and Moses, the oldest words in the whole Bible. You know, just as a quick aside, talking about reading the Bible, the Life Application Study Bible, this is a hardcover. The softcover is not quite as big and heavy. This is you can read the Bible text. There's commentary beside each text. There's context for who each character is. There's maps. I mean, this really helps you to understand what these Bible stories are talking about. And I brought this because when I was a Christian, I was raised in a Christian family, kind of grew up as a Christian as a child. And then in my 20s, I got away from it for a while. Do you know how I got back into my faith? I started reading a kid's Bible. Just like this one, the complete illustrated children's Bible. That's how I got back, because I just opened up and there's these pictures and the stories are a little bit easier to understand. And I just read and I just got absorbed in these stories of the Bible. And I was like 26, 27 years old. And that, just get yourself something that will work. Get a kid's Bible that doesn't have really goofy graphics. The pictures in this one are really good. That's just an aside. I want to just refer to, it's the story of Joseph. Because if you want to look at sort of a definitive story about here's what God's asking you to do, believe that God will give you the wherewithal to do it, and then this plan will be revealed. The Joseph story is it's Genesis chapter 37 to 45. If you're at home and you have a pen, write that down. I encourage you to read it. It'll take you maybe half an hour. Read the whole story. Genesis 37 to 45. I mean, the end of the story at Genesis chapter 45 is just absolutely mind-blowing. It's just, I mean, it'll show you who God is, but beyond that, it's just classic literature. It's just a classic story with plots and intrigue and all of that kind of stuff. So the story begins with a dream that Joseph had. And this dream that Joseph had showed him a future that was filled with good things. This is, well, wedding season. We're going to get to that in just a second, Yancy. Wedding season has just kind of finished. I was privileged to officiate a few weddings this summer, but also my 2 sons were married this summer. Sorry, not this summer, this year. When people are getting married, they have this dream. That's why being a part of a wedding is so fun. When people get married, they have this dream. Their whole future is just before them. It could be kids, is what they're dreaming of. It could be buying a house. It could be just like, we're gonna live together. Like, I get to live with this person I'm just head over heels in love with. That could be the dream. But married people just have this dream. And when you have a dream for a good future, it changes your present. Like, just think about that. If you have a dream for a good future that you know is going to happen, you could be living in a ditch. Like, you could be in the midst of struggle. You could be living in the darkest place in the present time, but that dream for the future gives you hope, and it changes your present. And so Joseph has this dream. And sorry, Answer, we can put that up now. Now, this is a dream that you just don't get when you first hear it. You don't get it at all. It doesn't make any sense. Listen, people will bow down before me. Your sheaves of grain will bow down to mine. I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. This is like Joseph is a narcissist? No. Like, see, you can understand why his brothers were annoyed with him. Now, if you know the story, his brothers took him, threw him in a hole, like a cistern, and then sold him to slavery. And I'm going to get back to this dream, because at the end, the dream makes perfect sense, and we can see, now I see. God had a plan all along. I didn't understand it at the time. Joseph didn't understand that dream at the time. His brothers certainly didn't understand it. But after, they look back and go, now I get it. But the first truth that comes out of this story is that God gives dreams to people. God gives dreams to you and to me. What's your dream? Has God laid some kind of a dream on your heart? What's your vision for your future? And respectfully, I do not want to hear from any of you here that you're too old. By the way, no one in the Bible retires. Did you know that? There is not one person in the entire Bible that retires. People want to retire, and God says to them, no, you're not retiring. I'm going to give you a whole new calling. And this is just example after example. Abraham and Sarah. Moses was old. Jesus' disciples weren't that young when Jesus. Matthew, the tax collector, scholars believe was in his late 30s, which was old. There's no retiring in the Bible. So what is your dream for your life? There's a couple of things when we talk about dreams that are just really important. The dreams that we have to be founded on something real, right? You don't want to be dreaming about something in your life that is never going to happen. Now, just think about that. If, for instance, if you have a dream you want to be a singer, do you have a dream you want to be a singer? So many people do after watching The Voice or America's Got Talent. It's just a thing now. Everybody wants to be a singer. If you pick up a mic and start singing and you clear the room, you're not going to be a singer ever. That dream is not founded on anything real. Right? Like if your daughter wants to be a doctor, fantastic. But if her grade point average out of grade 12 is 73%, it's probably not going to happen. I wanted to play in the NHL. I did. But when I tried out for the AAA team when I was 13, I got cut first round. And then I tried out for the AA team, and I got cut first round. It was okay because House League was a match made in heaven for me. I loved House League. Look, your dream has to be founded on something real, doesn't it? Like, that just makes sense. So, here's the question that we ask. How do we know whether or not our dream is from God? How do we know our dream is from God? Well, here's the first part of that. If it fits with your God-given gifts. See, this is what I said when I started. I said, this is just simple to understand and something that you can just, yeah, I get that. It makes sense. And it doesn't even matter what religion you're from or what faith background. If you have a dream that is just miles apart from the things that you're just naturally good at, it's probably not a God-given dream. In his letter to the Romans, Paul talks about gifts. We're all given different gifts. Some people have a gift of teaching. Some people have a gift of serving. Some people have a gift of prophesying. And he's just got this long list of gifts that, and oftentimes when we say that people are gifted, it's kind of like just that one person has a gift and this person, oh, he's gifted, he's not gifted. But in the Bible, everybody is gifted. Everybody has a gift that they can share. You know, your dream. If you have a dream and you want to know it's from God, it's got to somehow fit with the gifts that you have. And some of those gifts you're not even born with, you've acquired them. Like if you have a gift of money or if you have a gift of skill, your dream might jive with that. But that's how you know. That's the first way that you know that your dream is from God. It jives, it fits with your God-given gifts. Here's the second thing. And this is huge because sometimes when we talk about dreams, we tend to get a little bit self-absorbed with our dream tends to be a little bit more for us. To know whether or not your dream is from God, if your dream is for the good of the world, right? God gives us dreams, calls us into certain places, not first for our own good, but for the good of the world. Example after example after example, all through the Bible. We've got just a few here. Deuteronomy 10, he defends the cause of the orphan and the widow, loves the homeless and the alien, giving him food and clothing. That's a dream. That's a dream that we're supposed to have. Jesus said, I want you all to have the same dream. This is what I want you all to have the same dream. Feed the poor, live in peace, love each other. Well, carry on. Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. That's one of the oldest laws in the Bible. Genesis chapter 12, your people will be blessed, that they may be a blessing to the world. That was the very first dream that God gave Abraham. When Abraham went out and God said, you're going to have descendants that are more larger than grains of sand on the beach, you know, that whole, but then he said, but the reason that I'm blessing you is that I want you to be a blessing to the world. That's just the basis of biblical law. Exodus 3, I've heard the cries of oppressed people and now I call you to help them. That's supposed to be their dream. All through the Bible, now and again, well, people will lose this dream and then we start to think the dream is all about us. So, back to David's dream. Look at this. This is amazing. David's dream seemed to be about him, and that's what made his brothers so mad. Let's just put that back up. People will bow down before me. Your sheaves of grain will bow down to mine. At the end of the story, in Genesis chapter 45, we see this remarkable event. It's one of the best endings of any story I've ever read, where, if you know the story, Joseph's brothers have to travel to Egypt because there's a famine in their land. And they get to Egypt, and they get up to this palace or wherever it is the Pharaoh lived, and Joseph's there. Joseph's the right-hand man to the Pharaoh. And they go into the palace, and they see Joseph, and they don't recognize him because he's dressed like an Egyptian Pharaoh. And they walk up, and they say, we need food because we're starving. There's famine in our land. And here's what happens. This is incredible. Listen. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. It's like the same brothers that sold Joseph into slavery because they were jealous. And he's like, I'm your brother. And now do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. How this awful, horrible thing where Joseph's brothers throw him into a hole and sell him into slavery, God took that awful, horrid thing and made it into something beautiful. It was to save lives. Like somehow God used it for this incredible plan to save lives. For the next 5 years there will be famine in the land, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. The dream was never about Joseph. Right from the very beginning, the dream was about the salvation of people, and it was about forgiveness. That was God's plan, right from the very beginning. So, what's your dream? God doesn't just give Joseph a dream. Do you ever have something on your heart that you just think, I just wish this could be that way? Is there just something that you just think, this just needs to change? This just needs to change, and we need to do something, and my vision is just to do something so that this can change, and we can... Do you ever just see like a different kind of future, and you've just had that on your heart, but you say what Moses said, who am I? Like, I don't have any gifts. I'm just Moses. I'm just Ken. I'm just Jan. I'm just Marley. Let me ask you this. What dream do you have for this church? Like, who do you think that we could be that adheres to the criteria for a dream really being from God or not? What dream do you have on your heart for this church? Maybe it's so big that you don't think you can even get it out of your heart and into the words of your mouth. I don't know. But I think we all have dreams. You have dreams for yourself. You have dreams for this church. Some of those dreams are so important. Because if you don't get them out and you just keep them in, that dream could be a part of God's plan all along. And what if it never comes out? What if we never act on that dream? Listen to God's direction in your life. Believe that God will give you the wherewithal to have the things that you need to have to make it happen, and then watch that plan reveal.